Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to be showing you how to build a gaming PC. Now, in my previous videos, I showed how to pick out parts for your system, but for this video, it's time to actually build it. Now, building a gaming PC isn't super difficult. A lot of it is just following instructions, watching videos, and it can take time, but as long as you're careful and try to make sure you're doing the right thing, it's not super difficult. I'm going to go ahead and cut over to my build table and show you how to do it. So here we are at the build desk. Now, to start, you're going to need a couple tools for building a PC. First of all, you need a screwdriver. Here I've got myself an electric screwdriver kit that I'm going to use for this build. You're also going to need cable straps. My drawer here, got some reusable cable straps, and you're also going to want to get yourself grounded. So there's a couple different ways to ground yourself. One of them is an anti-static wristband, but I'm going to use a simpler method using my power supply. Okay, so here we have my Corsair CX650M, and this is what we're going to use to ground ourselves. So what you can do with a power supply is, by hooking it up to an outlet, and every once in a while you're working on a PC, while it's turned on, just giving it a tap, putting your hand on it, it'll help keep you grounded. So to start, we've got our motherboard. This here is a Gigabyte Ultra Durable B365M, compatible with the Intel 9th generation of CPUs, and this is going to be the motherboard for our build. So to start, we're going to install our processor. So on this board here, this is an Intel board. I'm going to take this little lever here, move it off to the side, and lift it up. So inside our socket here, thousands of tiny little pins. Break one of them, whole board can be dead. So you want to be very careful when handling the CPU socket. So in our CPU socket, we're installing here a Intel Core i5 9600KF. So it's pretty simple to install it. If you want to look here, there's a little golden triangle. Match that up on your board. If you see here, got this triangle here, that's where our CPU is going to line up. So it's pretty easy. You just simply take it, drop it in the socket just like that. Now what we're going to do is close the socket. So you may have noticed this black cover here. Some people try to rip that off. You don't want to do that. It'll pop right off when you install your CPU. Right here, and boom. Now this cover here, you actually want to keep this. If something went wrong with your motherboard and you had to RMA it, you will need this black cover. So keep it in the motherboard box and make sure you don't lose it. So here we've got Corsair Vengeance 3200 DDR4. This is the RAM we're going to use on this system. So if you see here, this has got 4 memory lanes. For this RAM, you're not going to want to install it in the two next to each other. You want to space out your RAM. That way you're getting dual channel and actually getting the amount of RAM you've installed. So sometimes RAM can take a little pressure to install. Just gotta be, you don't have to be super crazy careful. Just make sure you don't go too crazy. Simply just push pretty hard. Make sure you've heard both clamps. Do it on the same side. Just boom, boom, and our memory is installed. Alright, next we've got an M.2 SSD. Now this one is a WD Blue one that has a cooler on it. So to start, you want to locate your M.2 standoff here. This one's already got a little screw in it. That's how my motherboard came. So what we're going to do is quickly unscrew that. Use a screwdriver. Take out the little screw. Then you'll want to make sure the standoff is in the correct position for your SSD. And then simply just slot it in carefully. You'll have your little M.2 slot here. Then put the little screw back like so. Just want to line it up. And there you go. M.2 installed. Alright, so usually, in most cases, you would have installed a cooler as well along with these other things. But because I'm using a liquid cooling AIO, I'm actually going to install after I install the motherboard. Now here in the case, we have standoffs. Now, not every case will have standoffs installed. Mine does have them pre-installed, but you want to make sure they're installed to keep the motherboard off the back of the case. You also want to make sure they're in the right places for your motherboard. You also want to try and remember your I/O shield. Many people forget this. It's not the end of the world if you do forget it, but it is definitely something you want to put in if you do remember. Now it's time to install our motherboard. So we're going to go ahead here, take our motherboard. Typically, again, you'd have the cooler on it and install it. So picking up your motherboard, you don't really want to grab it by the PCB like on this. It's better if you have a large heatsink to grab it by that, or the cooler if you've already installed it. Otherwise, just be very careful and grab it by the sides like so. You'll want to lower into the case. Oh, this is getting in the way. Lower into the case and line it up with the standoffs. Just like this. Alright, now it's time to screw in our motherboard. Now, here's motherboard screw here. It's got this little ring around it. You want to look for this. Cases come with a lot of different screws, so it's important to make sure you're using the right ones. So we're going to go in, make sure it's lined up with our standoffs. And once you've got it there, just screw it right in. Just put it there. Alright, first screw is in. Now that our motherboard is screwed in, we're going to install our AIO. So for this build, I'm using an AIO liquid cooler, which means it's going to have a block here, and then pipes that run to a radiator that I'm going to mount right up on top of the case. Okay, now comes one of the harder parts of building a PC. That's installing the AIO. So you're going to start with a backplate. Different AIOs are going to have different instructions, so I recommend you follow your instructions. But I'm going to show you how to do mine. So if you look here, I've got these pins. This is where the AIO screws are going to go. And I've already got 2 of them on, but I'm going to show you how to do it. So with this one here, you want to make sure they're lined up correctly here. And then there's this little plastic bit that goes right on top of it. Let's do the other. Just like so. Boom. And finally, this. So make sure those are in nicely. Be careful because they may fall. And now we're going to install the backplate, just like this. Go ahead here. Make sure everything's on correctly. Like this screw I noticed here is not on correctly. As you can see, there's a reason I really don't like this. It is not easy, but once we got that, you just put it right in, like so, and the backplate is installed. Again, as I've said previously, follow your instructions. They may not be exactly the same as this. This is fairly standard, but it always changes from device to device, so be careful. Alright, now to install the block. So, when it comes to coolers, some of them include thermal paste and some don't. This cooler does not have any pre-applied thermal paste, so we're going to apply our own. So, we got a little bit of thermal paste here. What we'll do is, when putting it on, you're just going to want to put a small drop, about a pea-sized drop. People debate on different ways to do it. I found the most effective is a pea-sized drop. That's actually a little larger than you might need. Came out a little faster than I wanted, but it'll work. So after that, put our thermal paste on. We'll get our block of our AIO. Then we're going to want to go here, line it up properly with the little metal poles here, and then screw it on. So now we've got the screws partially on here. So what you're going to do is, to tighten the screws, go in a pattern like this. Start tightening it, don't go crazy. Then go to the one right across from it. Go next to it. And then go right across from it. And you're just going to want to keep doing this until you've got a good amount of pressure on there. It'll spread out your thermal paste. You'll have a good amount of heat coverage. So we're just going to keep doing this. Oh, don't do that. Keep doing this here. Like so. Keep screwing. And eventually, you'll feel it's nice and tight on there, and you'll be good. Just make sure you don't put too much pressure. If you do too much, that could be a little damaging. Make sure it's nice and firm on the CPU. Now, this is something I actually realized I should have done before installing the block, but I already did, so I'm going to have to do it after. And that's installing fans on the AIO radiator. So radiators are going to come with a couple different types of screws. The one you're going to want to be looking for is the really long ones here. Just like this. Long because it goes through the fan and then into the radiator. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Just be careful not to... I've seen some people, what they do is they use the long screw to go through the radiator into the fan. Never do that because that could destroy your AIO. So we're just going to go here, get our screwdriver. They're not super hard to screw in. They're big. Let's turn on my screwdriver. There we go. So you just want to put them through here. Sorry if my AIO is a little dusty. I have been using this AIO, but I'm using it for the build guide now, so it's a bit dusty, but what can you do? Tried cleaning it up as best I could before the video. Now we got that there. And screw in. And there we go. First one's in. So you're basically just going to do that on all four until you've got your fan installed. Alright, now we're going to mount the radiator to the top of the case. Now, radiators can be mounted in different orientations. It all really depends. Me personally, though, I like to mount mine right at the top here. So we're going to set it there while we get our screwdriver. Radiator came with these flat screws here. Then we're just going to want to go, make sure it's lined up correctly, just like this. Take a radiator, find it, look, make sure the screw hole is lined up properly, just like this. And then we'll want to screw in our radiator. So, you can see here, might be a little hard to see. Got one screw in. Now you're going to want to do it on all four for this radiator. Obviously, again, you want to follow your instructions for your radiator. You might be doing in different orientations. Like the front here, you might want to unscrew these fans and put your radiator there. There's different places you can put it. I'm putting mine on top, just like so. Now, along with the SSD, I'm also installing a hard drive. Over here, I've got a 3 terabyte hard drive that's going to also go in the system. This is for mass storage like games and other things like that. So, this case here has a hard drive bay right in the bottom. Let's see if I can get it. Right here in the bottom, big old hard drive bay. Simply put, each case will be different on how you install hard drives. This one here has got these little brackets go on the side. And then you just slide it in if it'll actually go in. Sometimes it pop off a little bit. But once you got it, there we go. There we go. Hard drive's in. Alright, next we're going to be installing our power supply. So here's my Corsair 650. This here is a semi-modular power supply. Different power supplies all have different things about them. I used to have a non-modular power supply, meaning all the cables with the power supply are connected. There's also fully modular, which means no cables, and all these here, you'll have to connect yourself. This one's semi-modular, meaning you've got a couple cables here. For example, I believe this is a CPU cable here. Yep. And your motherboard 24 pin. But all the rest, you choose what you want to put on there. So now we've taken our power supply cables we need. We've got a PCIe cable for our graphics card. I've got this Molex one. I hate Molex connectors, but my PC does have one I need to use, so I'm going to use it. And of course a SATA for our hard drive. So we'll just go here, take them and match them up to where they go. For example, right here it says SATA. We're going to go ahead and stick this right in there. Let's go ahead, line it up correctly. Just like so. And boom. That's it. Here's our PCIe. Make sure you're using the right one. Again, these are labeled PCIe. This is not. So this is our connector that we're going to plug into here. PCIe CPU. Plug that in. And our Molex connector. That's going to go into one of the SATA PATA right here. Then, once these are installed, we'll go ahead and make sure the fan and your power supply is pointing towards your vent right here. Just like mine, it's on the bottom. And carefully slide your power supply in. After that, there are 4 screws that you screw into on your power supply, and it'll be installed. Now, actually, before installing the graphics card, you should hook up the bottom I/O, because once you have that card installed, you are not going to be able to access this. So, this can be one of the hardest parts of cabling. It is not fun to do, but it is unfortunately necessary. So, you're going to want to find your different connectors and connect them in their proper locations. So, for example, here, I just installed the front panel audio. And then the hardest one, by far, is the power switch. The power switch is difficult. So, sometimes on your motherboard, it'll be labeled in a little square box. Sometimes it'll be in your manual. Just look for that. You may have to look it up. It is not easy. I'm going to be doing this here. It's not easy, but I'll show you it when it's done. Alright, now my motherboard connection is done. I actually ended up looking on Google. I found this nice chart that shows the B365M DS3H front I/O connections. I recommend doing something like that. It is not easy to hook up. I recommend looking into something like this. It'll help a lot. But once that's done, that is one of the hardest parts of building a PC, to be honest. Next is the installation of the graphics card. This here is my RTX 3060 Ti that we're going to be putting in this system. This one is the Asus TUF version, and it is absolutely massive. So, as you can see here, I've already taken out the PCI slots. This case in particular had punch-out ones, meaning once they're removed, you can't put them back. So if you see here, there's some silver ones at the bottom. Those are from a different case. So, make sure you only punch out the ones you know you're going to use. So, for this here, it's pretty simple. You just kind of stick it in here and push it into a slot till it clicks in place. Then you'll have two screws right here and here for this card because it is a dual bracket card. Get ourselves some screws to put that in. You're going to use these bigger screws here for this guy. And then we'll go ahead and put these in. Just screw them in here. We're using the big screwdriver just because these are larger screws. Typically I use my electric, but because they are larger screws and I want them to be really tight in there, holding down my card, we're going to use the big guy. Let's make sure that there. It'll be a little bit of a pain to line them up. I sometimes have to hold them with my finger, but once they're in, just screw them in. Just like so. Alright, now it is time for the final step. Cable management, which, after all that's going on, installing the liquid cooler, all that, is by far the hardest part of building any computer. Cable management is not fun, it is not easy, but to have a nice computer, you're gonna have to do it. One final note I'm gonna add before I start doing this is case fans. As you notice, I did not install any. This case came with two in the front, and I had previously installed this one in the back. Installing case fans is not that hard. There are just simply 4 screws that you put on each corner of the fan to install it. I didn't install them because I already had them installed, but I thought I should bring that up just in case you need to install one. So now we're going to be installing and plugging in some cables. So we're actually going to start here with our graphics card. Got here a PCIe cable, and I've also got an extension. On Amazon, you can get cable extensions that attach right to your different cables like CPU, PCIe, 24-pin, and can make your cables look really nice. So I'm going to be using one because I really like them. So this one here, my graphics card, needs 8 pins. So I'm going to take the little secondary pin here, line it up with my extension, and snap it in, just like so. Now we can route the cable right through here. I'm going to route it right through the bottom of the case, actually. Just like so. Right here. And plug it in. And boom, our graphics card is now plugged in. Alright, now it's time to see if all of our hard work paid off. Now, you definitely don't want to close up your PC before making sure it actually boots up, because you don't want to have to take it apart if something doesn't go wrong. So we're going to go ahead, flip our power supply, and moment of truth. Here we are. Things are lighting up. Let's see what happens. And post screen, meaning it worked. Obviously, there are some issues. If you notice here, the RGB lighting is not on. Likelihood is something's unplugged. So I'm going to go back and look, and hopefully I can figure out the cause of the issue. Alright, here we are. We got the RGB working. Turns out the RGB controller wasn't plugged in, but here we are. Here we are, back at my desk. As you can see in the background, here's the PC we built right here. It is my main rig, and it is working just as well. So one thing I'm going to actually point out is, after bringing it upstairs and hooking it up, I did notice one thing. My liquid cooler wasn't going. Apparently one of my fan headers failed. So once you have your PC up and running, I recommend checking your CPU temperatures to make sure your cooler is actually working. Obviously, if you're using an air cooler, you'll see pretty quick if that fan's going. But liquid coolers, just make sure that it's actually working and the fan header you're using is working. But other than that, we have a perfectly working gaming PC now. It works really well, and I honestly love the thing. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Now comes one of the harder parts of building a PC. The full installation of an AI. It is not the easiest thing. Oh my god!